Howie Klein joins us. He's the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC, which raises money for progressive candidates around America. He also writes Down with Tyranny. Everybody should go there every day. What is Act Blue? What is the relationship between Act Blue and the Blue America PAC?
It's like the relationship between you and your credit card. It's a company that makes it easy for people to contribute to Democrats. So you can't contribute to anything else. You can't contribute to a Republican, but you can go to Act Blue and contribute to, through your credit card, you can contribute to any kind of a Democrat, whether it's progressive or Blue Dog or anything else. And Blue America was one of their very first clients. We adopted that immediately, and but now they've raised billions of dollars, and everyone uses it. Obama used it, Hillary Clinton used it, and it's Bernie, of course. It's used by every Democrat.
Okay. So there's a lot to go over today. In fact, today, Maine, South Carolina, and Wisconsin have some important elections, and we'll get to that. 5 states are voting today.
The 5 states have primaries, and then Wisconsin doesn't have a primary till August, but tonight they will know the winners of two special legislative elections, a state Senate election and a state assembly election. They're very, very important, and we'll talk about why.
I want to ask you about Gavin Newsom, who is the Democratic nominee for governor in California. Dianne Feinstein is 84, I believe, and she's running for re-election. She's a senator from California, and she's got another...
I thought she was 184. Are you sure you didn't leave off a number? I can swear she's 184.
You know, in defense of Dianne Feinstein, she's been married 3 times. She had 4 names to pick, and she went with Feinstein. She's married to a guy named Blum. She went with Dr. Feinstein's last name, which is a hard name to get elected to the Senate with. So she deserves a little respect there. I want to ask you who you're going to vote for, her or Kevin DeLeon. California has something called jungle primaries. They were instituted back in 2010 to encourage moderation, right? What is the thinking behind jungle primaries? What is a jungle primary? Are they going to last? Are we going to see more jungle primaries in California, or do you think they're going to get rid of them?
Well, it's not just California. There are other states that have them, too. They're a really bad idea, and they don't encourage moderation. They encourage stupidity. So, right now, because of the jungle primaries, there are 10... There were 11 districts, but one got called. But there are now 10 districts that haven't been called yet, where we don't know. I mean, for example, Nancy Pelosi doesn't know who she's running against. Is it going to be someone on the far right, or a crazy Republican, or is it going to be someone on the far left? She doesn't know.
Does she know who she's running for?
She's so popular. I mean, I'm not crazy about her, but there were more votes and more people came out to vote in her district than any other district in California. She had 130,000 people who turned out mostly to vote for her. And, there were districts where they only less than 40,000 people came out to vote. She had 340,000 people. I mean, we may make fun of her. We may think she's awful, but voters in San Francisco seem to think she's fabulous. Anyway,
so we don't know.
You asked me about Rohrabacher, the Orange County guy who Putin uses in Congress, and no one knows who he's running against. He came in number 1. But there are 2 Democrats, who, I call them Frick and Frack, Harley Rauda and Hans something or other, and they're going back and forth, seesawing back and forth of who has more votes. The last time I looked, they were divided by 20 votes. 20, that's it. And the Republican, a guy named Bao, or I don't know how you pronounce his name, Baugh, he's only 1,000 votes behind them. So Rohrabacher has no idea who he's running against either. And like I said, there are 10 districts in California where that's the situation. Now, that's why that's not the reason that I hate the jungle primary. And I hate the jungle primary for a very, very different reason. It cuts out the party that doesn't win the primary in this big hodgepodge, which is why people call it a jungle primary. Other states have a jungle primary also, where everybody runs at the same time, but they then pick one Democrat and one Republican to run from that hodgepodge. In California, it doesn't work that way. In California, the two top vote getters, whether they be a Democrat or a Republican, doesn't matter. You could have two Democrats, or, as you sometimes do, or you could have two Republicans, as you sometimes do. So it isn't really fair to either party, and I don't like the way it's been working at all. In fact, I hate it, and I think most sort of politically active people in the state hate it. But it was passed by a what does that call, an initiative? So it's very, very hard to get rid of. So I guess we're sort of stuck with it.
Did we as liberals want that 10 years ago? Because I remember in 2010 complaining that when a congressman runs for re-election, when he's challenged in the primaries, he becomes an extremist. So is this to create an atmosphere that discourages challengers or encourages challengers?
It doesn't. It just makes people mixes up people, whatever the theory may be. The reality is it gets everybody confused. Let's take, for example, California District 8. So the incumbent there is a guy named Paul Cook. So Paul Cook was up for re-election. He's not a very good, or he's kind of a backbencher, and no one knows who he is. And
Democrat or Republican?
He's a Republican, and I think it's the biggest district in terms of square footage in the state. It's just gigantic district, very, very hard to campaign in. It goes all the way from San Bernardino's suburbs as far north, although not into Sacramento, but as far north as Sacramento. But it hugs the Nevada border. Most of it is desert, and little towns and deserts, and lots of mountains. It's mostly empty. But there are towns everywhere, and it's really, really hard to campaign there. Anyway, the Democrat who was running against him, Marge, what's her name again? Marge. Oh, I can't remember her name. Oh, Marge Doyle, that's her name. So Marge is a good progressive Democrat. She was running against him. But towards the end, this guy Donnelly jumped in. I don't know if it was toward the end, actually. Towards the end, he became apparent. He may have been running the whole time. And Donnelly had been at one time in the state legislature. Donnelly is so extreme that there aren't words to describe how extreme he is. He would sometimes be the only member of the state legislature to vote against something that everybody else agreed on. He's a racist. He's a neo-Nazi. He's the worst of the worst. But he just campaigned on Trump. That was his whole thing, Trump. And now it's too close to call, but it looks like it is too close to call, so we don't know yet. But he's leading Marge, so he right now he's number 2. So that means in the general election, voters don't get a chance to pick between Cook and Marge. They get a chance to pick between Hitler and Mussolini. No, I shouldn't really call Paul Cook Mussolini. Let's see. What do you call? Well, I guess you could call him Bush. He's sort of like Bush. You get
Franco.
Like a Bush.
Franco.
No, not that bad. More like Bush. You get between Bush and Hitler.
Right.
And so, what do normal people do? What do you just stay home from? You don't vote. I mean, you can't. Right. If you live there, you can't vote. If he indeed becomes the nominee. So that's the reality of the way this stupid thing works. Whatever they had as a theory, it doesn't work that way. It would work better if everybody voted in the primaries. But that isn't the way it goes, especially in big blue or big red states. People don't go out and vote because they figure, hey, I got a Democrat's going to win anyway, why bother? Or a Republican's going to win anyway, why bother? And then they don't go out and vote. And then you get these, instead of getting moderation, you wind up with exactly the opposite. You get this, you get a neo-Nazi running. And, if you'll notice, I don't remember this happening before, but we've got actual neo-Nazis running as Republicans this time in the general. You've got them, spread out over the country, even to the point where Republican Party establishment is very, very upset. And they're not just, one or two, there are quite a few. So that's so if I want to know if this is if this is supposed to encourage moderation, it doesn't.
Right.
Although to be fair, the other states that have it aren't necessarily jungle primary states. Anyway, I hate the jungle primary. I think it's awful. I wish we could get rid of it, and we can't. So we're stuck with it.
And there's another Donnelly who I assume you don't like, the senator.
No, I don't. He's a blue dog Democrat in Congress. He knew he was going to be defeated, so he took a flyer and decided to run for the U.S. Senate, figuring it would be, kind of funny to just run for the Senate. He had no reason that he would think he was going to win, but he would, he wasn't going to win his House seat. So he figured might as well, take a shot, and everything worked out right for him, starting with. The incumbent senator, very liked and respected, lost to some crazy right-wing lunatic. So here you get Richard Lugar, who is one of the most respected Republicans in the Senate. He wound up losing his seat to a lunatic, literally a lunatic. So Donnelly was in shock. I mean, wow, what a great position to be in. Suddenly he's not running against a respected, revered, longtime incumbent. He's running against a lunatic. And sure enough, the lunatic, started babbling a bunch of nonsense right off the bat, talking, I don't know, talking, I don't remember which was which, but I think he started talking about how it's God's will if a woman gets raped or something like that. Something completely insane. And that was the end of his campaign.
Yeah, the guy said that women make a juice that keeps them from getting pregnant when they're raped.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the guy was crazy. And that's how Donnelly won in Indiana, which was very, very hard for a Democrat to do statewide. Very, very hard. And Donnelly did it. And now he tends to vote very, very frequently with the Republicans. In fact, there was a Supreme Court ruling today in which Gorsuch, of course, voted wrong. He voted, we should really talk about this next week, but he voted to allow Ohio to kick people off the voter rolls even if they missed one election. In other words, you miss one election, goodbye. You're not registered to vote anymore, and you can't vote. And so even if a friend of mine was just in a coma, he just got out of a coma. He was in a coma for 2 months, literally in a coma. Couldn't speak, couldn't hear anything. He was out to the world for 2 months, and he just came out of it. Well, he wouldn't have been allowed to vote. He missed the election. So now, if he would go there in November to try to vote, they would say, no, you can't vote anymore.
Unbelievable.
So Gorsuch was one of the ones who voted for that. And I was thinking, are you proud of yourself, Joe Donnelly, for voting to confirm Gorsuch? Because he did vote to confirm Gorsuch.
Well, in California, we have a gentleman named Gavin Newsom who's running for governor. And he's, I guess, running against Cox. Is that the Republican?
Trump is Republican.
Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco, and then he became, the Secretary of State?
No. He went from being the mayor
to
of
lieutenant
San Francisco.
governor.
He wanted to run for governor, and it wasn't working out for him, so he jumped over to lieutenant governor.
Right.
So while he was still thinking he was going to run for governor, he called a meeting of all the political bloggers in in Los Angeles, and I was one of them, and we all met with him. And literally every person in that room fell in love with him except me. Everyone, even people who I really admire and respect, everyone loved him. And he's very, very smart. There's no doubt about that. I mean, people would ask really, really tough questions, and they would then realize that he knew more about the issue than they did. Guy's really smart. But I found him sort of slimy and greasy, and didn't like him. So first of all, he's the mayor of San Francisco. So how brave do you have to be as mayor of San Francisco to allow a gay couple to get married and perform that service on the steps of City Hall? And he, acts as though, he's the bravest person in the world, where it's not really about being brave to do something like that. He's a corporate Democrat with, who's good on social issues and only wants to talk about the social issues and never wants to talk about what it is to be a corporate Democrat. He avoids anything like that, like the plague, and just wants to talk about easy social issues that he's good on. The other thing he avoids is talking about
single payer
scandal he's had. And my worry with him is that another one like that's going to come out halfway through the election, and we could lose that seat.
What's the scandal? What is the scandal?
The scandal was his best friend, who was his campaign manager, had a wife, and Newsom says he was drunk. I don't know. I don't have any reason to believe he wasn't drunk. But he had sex with his best friend's wife, and I believe it was more than sex. He had an affair with her. Maybe he was drunk every day. And he was married, and the best friend was married, and he did that. So I don't really care if someone does that. It's their private life, and they can do that if they want to. But how do you trust someone who betrays their best friend like that? That's a question that I have to figure out. And I would never vote for him anyway, because I don't vote for corporate Democrats, and I don't vote for lesser of two evils. There's no doubt that he's the lesser of two evils. And I used to support lesser of two evil candidates until a few years ago, and I said, hey, I'm old. I'm finished supporting people that I can't defend, except to say lesser of two evils. I'm done with that. So he's the lesser of two evils. I'm not going to vote for him.
Where's he on Medicare for All? California, there are rumblings that they're going to have single payer. Well,
the reason we didn't have single payer before, it's funny, because I know you're going to ask me next about Kevin DeLeon. Kevin DeLeon is the president of the Senate, and he passed single payer. The Senate passed single payer. Jerry Brown, the current governor, flipped out, and he was screaming, I do not want this coming on my desk, because he felt he had to veto it, and he didn't want that to blemish his record. Mm-hmm. So he talked the Speaker of the Assembly into not allowing it to pass in the Assembly. So it never really got voted on in the Assembly, and that's why we don't have it. So will Gavin Newsom become governor and change that? I doubt it. We'll see, but I really doubt that it'll pass.
Interesting. Okay, so Kevin DeLeon is running against Senator Dianne Feinstein.
Dianne Feinstein. So where do I start? Do I start with Dianne or do I start with Kevin?
Start with Kevin.
Okay, so you are talking to someone who helped to recruit Kevin into running. He was unsure, although maybe he was sure. By the time I talked to him, I don't know, but he said he was unsure. And I went out to lunch with him and gave him the spiel about why he should run. And I honestly don't know how much effect I had, although he says that I did have an effect. And I walked away from that lunch thinking he may do it, and then he did. I like him. He's a real progressive. He's a working class guy who came up from a poor family, and that is reflected in his not just a voting record, but his leadership role that he's taken in politics. So Paul Ryan also came from a working class family, but he did the opposite. He came from a working class family, used all the ladders that people from working class families need to rise, and then he pulled the ladder up behind him. That Kevin didn't do that. Kevin's the opposite of that.
And he's a Bernie guy.
No, I don't know that he's a Bernie guy. He has a lot of the same issues as Bernie. I'd never asked him if he was a Bernie supporter. He might have been. I just don't know. So now let's go back to Dianne Feinstein. I'm voting for Kevin. Let's go back to Dianne Feinstein, who I've never voted for once. So Dianne Feinstein, I first came, I think I've maybe told you this story before, but I was very close with Harvey Milk, and we spent a lot of time together. And he would come back from the Board of Supervisors meeting. That's like in San Francisco, the county, which has boards of supervisor, and the city, which has city council, were identical. So they don't have a city council; they just have a board of supervisors, or they did in those days. I don't know what they have now. But Harvey would come back from the Board of Supervisors meeting, and he would be, flipping out and cursing and screaming, and the person he would be yelling about was Dianne Feinstein, who was also on the Board of Supervisors. The person who eventually assassinated Harvey didn't like him either, but he liked him more than he liked Dianne Feinstein. So I got my first introduction to her from Harvey Milk, who really detested her. So Harvey got murdered, and the same day that Harvey got murdered, the same guy, Dan White, also killed Mayor Moscone. So they were both murdered the same day, and Dianne Feinstein became the acting mayor, I believe, and then she ran for mayor. So when she ran for mayor, I already had, a very negative feeling about her. And then a friend of mine decided to run as well, and I helped in his campaign. And the friend is Jello Biafra, the lead singer of the Dead Kennedys. I mean, not just the lead singer. He kind of thought of it and wrote the songs. He did well in the election. He didn't come in second. I think he came in fourth in a huge list of candidates. And then she became mayor, and then she ran for governor, and she lost. And then she ran for senator, and then she won, and then she's been a senator ever since. And I think she first won the Senate. That's why I said 180 years, because I think she first got into the Senate when Lincoln was president.
Right.
And she's been in there ever since. She's very, very, very conservative. And one of the ways that she wins every time is that Republicans are really happy with her. If they have their own candidate, they'll vote for their own candidate, but they're happy to just vote for her. They don't have a problem. She votes, especially in the past, she's voted very, very Republican. It's a little less so now, but not a lot less so. And right now, when she's up against a real progressive, she's, minding her P's and Q's and trying to be much more progressive, but she never has been. She's always, the last Democrat to get behind anything. And when you think about someone who represents California, it's pretty shocking that you have to drag her along on, gay equality. She wasn't there for that. She's not there for anything. She's always the last one to come on board with anything that's out front, which is why the Republicans like her. They're not going to get anything better in this state. And like I said, because of the jungle primary, there's not even a Republican in the race. It's Dianne Feinstein versus Kevin De Leon. Now, Kevin doesn't have a good shot because you got to figure any Republican that comes is either going to not vote in that race or they're going to vote for her. And the history of it, so this isn't the theory. The history of it is that Republicans do vote for her. They're perfectly happy with her. And then you've got the conservative Democrats who love her. She's one of them, and moderates. And so it looks like Kevin isn't going to get much of a shot. He's going to get some Hispanic voters, probably majority, and he'll get the progressive voters, but she's got everything else. I was buoyed the other day when one of they had, it's like the California is divided up into Democratic Party districts, and one of the districts voted for Kevin. The leaders of the district voted for Kevin unanimously. So that was, I felt good about that. But, I'm not kidding myself. He's really, really good. She's really, really bad. But, I can't see him winning. There's always a chance, since she's 183, that she will cash it in before she turns 184.
Will we see a vigorous debate between the two? Is this an opportunity for the Democratic Party?
Yes, I believe so. I don't know that vigorous is a word that you use to describe anything she does. But I don't know. I mean, will she debate him at all? I'm sure he's dying to debate. I'm sure he's dying to, have debates up and down the state. I'm sure she won't do that. But she's got to debate him at least once.
And the heart and soul of the Democratic Party, is it ever going to be revealed? Or does it have one? Bernie.
Yeah, Bernie's the heart and soul.
Yeah.
And what do you mean, will it ever be revealed?
Well,
the Democratic establishment is doing everything they can to prevent Bernie from being the nominee. And, they want to have some, new version of Hillary, just another Hillary Clinton to be the nominee. And they're doing everything they can to make sure that happens. So, for example, they said this doesn't affect Bernie. I don't know how it doesn't. But they passed a rule at the DNC the other day, I think on Friday. Yeah, they passed it on Friday, that's saying if you cannot run for president if you're not a Democrat. And Bernie is an independent. He caucuses with the Democrat. He supports Democrats. After the election, he raised money for Hillary. So he's very much like a Democrat. But is he a Democrat? When he was first running for Congress, and once he even got in Congress, the Democrats always ran candidates against him. I mean, they would always find some conservative hack Democrat who, from the Republican wing of the Democratic Party, who would run against Bernie. And Bernie would beat them all the time, but Bernie had to beat both a Republican and a conservative hack Democrat. And then finally, when Howard Dean was governor of Vermont, he said, "Why are we doing this? This is bullshit. Bernie is more of a Democrat than these idiots that we're nominating. This is over. And he ended that practice. And then when Bernie ran for the U.S. Senate, the Democrats are smart enough not to run, one of their shitty candidates against him.
Howard Dean knew Bernie because he was the governor of Vermont.
Howard Dean was the governor of Vermont when he called off.
Yeah.
He called off the dogs, and he said, "No, we're not running against Bernie anymore."
Right. Well, today. Go ahead.
The DNC is what they're trying to say now. It sounds to me what they're trying to say is, "Hey, Bernie, if you want to run for president, you've got to join the Democratic Party," and he's never done that.
And is he?
So I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are running as a ticket. And I don't think the Democratic establishment is happy with that at all. They want they want like some corporate idiot, and there are a whole bunch of them. I think their favorite would be Biden, who's got a terrible reputation as a Wall Street Democrat, and he has a long before he was ever. There was a life that Biden had, a political life, long before he became vice president under Obama. And as vice president under Obama, he didn't do much except he was there. Obama treated him well, and he did do some things. But before that, he was a senator forever, and he was not a very good one. And in terms of he's the anti-populist. So he's probably their first choice. But I noticed today there was this whole spiel about, well, maybe we need a non-politician. Maybe we should go back and re-examine Oprah Winfrey and that coffee guy and Iger from Disney. And, come on, give me a break. We don't need, why? Because Trump is doing so well? Trump is a complete colossal failure. So let's find a Democratic version of that and see if we can beat Trump with that. What a joke.
Yeah.
When it's obvious that the people want Bernie. Not the dead-end Hillary supporters, but everybody but that wants Bernie.
Right. I do.
Okay, and I do too, so there we go. We agree.
Let's turn to the primaries.
How about Bernie and Elizabeth Warren together? Does that make you want that more?
Yeah, and Bernie would be the president. She would be the vice president.
I think so. No one told me that specifically. They just told me they're going to run together as a ticket.
Well, that would be the dream team.
I agree. That's what I call it on my blog, the dream team.
Let's talk about today. Maine, South Carolina, primaries. 5 states are having primaries today, plus a special election in Wisconsin.
Why don't we start with the special election in Wisconsin? We're going to know the answer to that pretty soon.
Okay.
There are two. There are 2 seats. So the main thing that you've got to know here is that the hilarity of Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, fighting to not have a special election. He doesn't want a special election. The reason for that is because every special election that they've had since Trump got into the White House, the Republicans have lost. Even in very red seats, and these 2 are not, but even in very, very red seats that Trump took by a lot, Democrats are winning. And that is embarrassing for Scott Walker. So he said, we're not having a special election. It's not so terrible if these districts don't have anybody representing them. And the districts didn't agree with him. And they got angry, and they took it to court, and the judge agreed. He said, no, you have to have a special election. And then what does Scott Walker does? He appeals it and goes to another court where the judge said the same thing. What, are you crazy? No more talk about this. You must have a special election. At which point, Scott Walker was thinking about taking it all the way to the Supreme Court, and then everybody was yelling at him for wasting the state's money on all of these expensive lawsuits that weren't going anywhere. So he finally gave up and said, "Okay, we'll have a special election." So that is today, and there's a lot of from what I hear, it looks really good for the Democrats. That certainly in the Senate seat, a Democrat's going to win, but there's a lot of thought that the Democrat's going to win in both seats. And I know about these races. They don't make it into the papers. You don't hear them. You don't hear about them on TV. But the reason I know about them is because Randy Bryce has been campaigning for the 2 Democrats, for Ann Lloyd and Caleb Forsman. So Randy has been going to their districts and helping them raise money, and using the celebrity that he has himself as the guy who chased Paul Ryan out of Congress. he's using that celebrity and that power to help Ann Lloyd and Caleb Forsman. So I feel good about these two races. And to quote the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, the biggest newspaper in the state, they said that what happens in today in Wisconsin will be an indication if there's a blue wave or not. Okay, I'm ready to accept that. So the rest of this thing is about these 5 states that are having primaries tonight. So those are Nevada, Maine, Virginia, North Dakota, and South Carolina. So generally speaking, Maine is pretty exciting. There's not too much excitement in the other states. I mean, Maine has got the most excitement. There's a little bit going on in the other states, of course. There's something. But I was very attracted. We'll get to Maine in a second. I was very attracted to, believe it or not, the Republican primary in South Carolina. Just one district. Because this is the district that always eludes the Democrats, but is always the one that could possibly turn blue. It's the one that includes most of the coastal area and what is the capital? God, how can I not remember this? It'll come to me in a second. The capital of South Carolina is there. Charlestown. So so it's if you ever watch Southern Charm, that's where it takes place, and you can see those people are pretty liberal. So Trump didn't win there by some gigantic margin. He got 53.5%. I think in all the other districts he wound up with 70%. But this is it's reasonable to think that a Democrat could be elected there. So that as preface, Mark Sanford, the former governor who got, the guy who was like walking in the Adirondacks or something.
Appalachian Trail.
The Appalachian Trail, right. So he resigned as governor, but everyone in the state knows him, especially every Republican knows him, and he's now the congressman from that district. And he was thought that, okay, well, he's in forever, but he's been relatively honest about Trump. So he's not one of these people who's, whatever Trump says, you go along with it. Did you see that picture, by the way, of Trump at a cabinet meeting putting his bottle of water on the floor?
And the mirroring of it?
By Mike Pence.
Yeah.
So Trump put his bottle of water on the floor, like Pence looked, and he thought, what do I do? And he said, I'll put my bottle on the floor, too. So he did. I mean, whoa.
Simeon says, do this. Simeon says, do that. Do that.
Yes.
I didn't say Simeon says.
Mark Sanford doesn't play Simeon says. So he's being attacked from the right by this state rep, Katie Arrington, and she's going after him. And her whole campaign is he's not loyal to Trump. We've got to be loyal to Trump. He's not the one. He's a disloyal, never Trumper. We've got to get him out. It's an embarrassment for blah 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 blah. So there's a thought that if she wins, which isn't likely but could happen, we'll know in a couple hours. If she wins, a Democrat might take that district. I mean, it could happen. I don't say it will, but it could. Anyway, so I'm interested in that to see what happens. Because the other thing is, if Sanford wins, she's made it into a kind of a plebiscite, so that Republicans in the rest of the country will say, "Oh, you can get away with criticizing Trump." If she wins, a lot of Republicans will say you can't get away with criticizing Trump, and they'll be too scared to do it. So that's another thing to look at.
Okay.
So the race that I'm the most interested in of all this stuff that's happening is the congressional race in Maine's 2nd District. And although there are a few candidates, it really comes down to this guy named Lucas St. Clair, and I'll talk about him in a second, and the candidate that Blue America endorsed named Jared Golden. So Jared Golden is a young working class guy, literally comes from just a normal working class family, and he, as a young guy, he joined the Marines. And he sort of he wasn't like one of these, again, not a JAG lawyer who's in the Marines. He was a frontline guy who was shooting, both in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he came back, and then he decided to go back to Afghanistan as a school teacher, which was pretty amazing that he did. And then he came back to Maine, and then he ran for the state assembly. He's now the second most powerful guy in the state assembly, as a state house, I should say. They don't have an assembly there, and he is the whip. He's the majority whip of the state house, and he's also the tip of the spear when it comes to especially when it comes to economic issues, any kind of progressive issue. I mean, he's the guy that's pushing. He's the guy that's making deals. He's the guy that's talking Republicans into backing a raise in the minimum wage, for example, or environmental regulations. I mean, he's always the guy that's first, getting the Democrats all behind it. And then, there are some conservative Democrats, so then he'll go to the independents. Mainly, it's like 7 independents in their state house, and you go to the Republicans and talk them into getting behind what he's trying to do. So he's just what we need for Congress. He's my kind of candidate, someone who's a leader. He's not going to sit around voting properly. I mean, he will, but that's not what he's about. He's a leader who can make things happen. He has a record that shows that. Lucas St. Clair, I don't even know how to begin. He may be a good voter. I don't have any idea. No one has any idea. He's an environmental guy. He believes in that. But mostly what he is just a rich kid. His mother, you ever hear Burt's Bees?
Right, right, yeah.
Stole it from the guy who started it. His mother is a real monster. And she stole this company and then moved it to North Carolina. So Maine lost all these jobs. And she's a monster. And her kid was, born with a silver spoon or a gold spoon in his mouth. And, what is he? He doesn't even live in the district. He lives in Portland, where all the rich people live. And, he decided to run, so he gets, some kind of cabin that he can try to run out of. And it's a big joke. And it's just, and he's got lots and lots of rich friends, and they put huge amounts of secret money into his race. And all these, it just really is an example of a Richie Rich son of a bitch running against one of us. That's really what it amounts to.
Right.
So I have every reason to believe that when all the votes are counted,
Golden.
Our guy, I think I didn't even mention his name. Did I mention his name?
Jared Golden.
Yes, that Jared will win this race. I believe it. And then he's going to go on to have to fight the Republican who's already the congressman, Bruce Poliquin. And Bruce Poliquin is another, Trump-oriented guy and a Wall Street guy. He worked on Wall Street, and he's all about Wall Street, and he doesn't care about anything else but Wall Street. That's his thing. He doesn't do anything for anyone who lives in the district. He works for Wall Street. So the district is Trump won it. The PVI is R+2. So in a wave election, there will be no red R+2s left. So I feel if Golden gets the nomination, which I feel pretty good about, he'll be able to wipe out Poliquin and become a congressperson. So that's the race I care about the most for today. The other race, though, that people are very excited about is replacing Paul LePage. LePage was termed out. He can't run for governor again. And so there's something like 7 Democrats and 5 Republicans. It's a real zoo. But the Democratic frontrunner is the state attorney general, Janet Mills. And, although there are others that have a chance of running a serious campaign, it looks like she's going to get it tonight. The Republicans have a bunch of people too, but their front runner pulled out. So that's bad for them. I mean, the only guy who is really known statewide is no longer in the race. So they're in trouble. And, the other thing that people, when you get into Nerdville, the other thing that's really important to people is the state Senate. The state Senate, the Republicans have one more vote than the Democrats, so that if the Democrats can flip one seat, they'll have control of the state Senate. They already have control of the state House, and if they elect a Democratic governor, which looks likely, and they get control of the state Senate, they will be able to, cure a lot of the ailments that that Maine has because of all these years of having LePage as governor with a pretty Republican legislature. So people are looking for that too. And it's hard to say what's going to happen. A lot of Democrats won in districts that Trump won, including in districts that Trump won by a landslide. So there's some worry there. But on the other hand, there are some Republicans that won in districts that Clinton won. So, it's hard to make that call now. I don't think we're going to know tonight. I think we won't know till tomorrow what happens.
You're going to miss LePage, right?
Sorry?
You're going to miss LePage, Governor LePage. He was a good man.
I will not miss LePage.
Good racist.
I hope he never again, as a matter of fact.
And anything in Nevada that we should be watching out for?
I mean, yes, but I don't think that there's anything in Nevada that's really that we can look to for any good news. I think the DCCC has their candidates, and they're going to probably win. It's funny. One of them is just awful. She's just so bad. First of all, the mafia is behind her. The mafia is very powerful in Las Vegas because of the casinos.
I hope it's who you're talking about. Go ahead. Who is this?
Susie Lee.
Oh, okay. Somebody else. Go ahead.
Okay. So Susie Lee, the Democratic Party rejected her last time. The Democratic establishment, which is sort of personified in Harry Reid, they rejected her. She's very, very, very wealthy, so Democrats usually want the wealthy one, but they didn't want her because she's so awful. She's a multimillionaire, and generally described as a socialite. Mm. I mean, is that a thing that you put on a resume, that you're a socialite and you're running for Congress? So this time they did something. They're trying to rename or rebrand all their horrible candidates. So one of the guys who won in California, he's a guy who fought against. As a lawyer, he's an attorney, and his whole attorney's practice has been fighting environmental groups on behalf of oil companies. That's how he got rich, by working for oil companies to beat down environmental organizations. So what is the DCCC calling him? An environmental attorney. Literally, that is literally what they talk to. Wow. When they talk about him, that's what they say. And then when they go to the media, especially the Washington-based media, they just the DCCC's media shop will say, yes, he's a San Diego-based environmental attorney. And these people in the media in Washington, they know nothing. I mean, literally nothing, and they don't even know how to use Google so they could check it out. And they'll all repeat what the DCCC says, and they'll refer to this guy, Mike Levin, as an environmental attorney. They have the same situation in Colorado, where they've got a guy who has spent his whole life trying to help payday lenders. That's what he does. I mean, other bad people too, but he's known as the guy who helps payday lenders. So the DCCC has decided to rebrand him as an attorney who fights for poor people in the working class. He fights against them. He doesn't fight for them.
Mom and pop bankers.
Yeah, exactly. Mom and pop bankers. So that's what they do. Right. And in the case of this Susie Lee in Las Vegas, they no more socialite. She's now known as a philanthropist.
Yeah. Well,
it's the same thing in Orange County, by the way. Another one of their dreadful candidates, what's his name? Cisneros, Gil Cisneros. He also was generally being referred to as the guy who won the lottery, which is the only thing. I mean, the other thing you call him is a potato chip taster, but he was a potato chip taster for Frito-Lay's, and then he won the lottery, and he doesn't taste potato chips anymore. I mean, he made in his own home, but that's not his occupation anymore. So he was widely known as the lottery winner. And the DCCC just changed that into philanthropist. So that's their new thing. Anyone who's worth millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, they're being called philanthropists.
Lucky bastard.
And I'm sure they donate money. Mm-hmm. I mean, I donate money. No one ever called me a philanthropist. So Susie Lee, she will find out tonight if she gets it. But my guess is she will. She's awful. Harry Reid is backing her. The DCCC is backing her. I think all their candidates are going to win. I don't think there's going to be a case of anything. There are good candidates running in every district, but I don't think any of them are going to win.
Great. Howie Klein is the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC. And
is that like how you say goodbye to me?
No, just wanted to remind you who you are. Sometimes as we're getting older, we forget.
Goodbye.
We can keep going. I don't want to be piggish with you.
No, I have something to do now. I like to count these votes as they come in. It's meaningful exercise for me.
Okay. We missed you last week.
Yes, it was odd because you didn't call, and I was wondering what happened.
I sent you an email.
Nope.
Yes, I did.
I got an email from you saying that you're going to do it, right? And I wrote back and said yes, and then you weren't there.
Oh, no, I sent a group email out. We're airing our dirty laundry here, Howie.
Right, let's not, because it doesn't matter. And
well, I'm sorry if you didn't get the email. I had a last-minute meeting that I had to get to.
Oh, you know what else I wanted to talk about? We can't do it tonight, but maybe we can do it next time. I just, because I think she's a friend of yours, Paula Poundstone, is she a friend of yours?
Oh, well, I love Paula Poundstone. She's a great comedian. Yeah.
So yes, and Ted Lieu had a fundraiser yesterday, which was really fun. His fundraisers are so great, by the way. If anyone is hearing me who could get to a Ted Lieu fundraiser, they are hilarious and so much fun. I mean, especially the question and answers time, someone asked him if he's seen the pee-pee tape, and he said, "I will neither confirm nor deny."
Well,
but he is a riot. Somebody named Lou
should know about the pee-pee tape. Lou. L-O-O. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In any case, I auctioned off some artwork by one of the people who does the Down with Tyranny art, Nancy, and someone who won it was one of the pieces was Paula Poundstone, and it was a great piece, and there was 10 people bidding, and Paula outbid them, and she got it.
Paula Poundstone should perform at these fundraisers. I
agree.
Yeah, she's a San Francisco classic. She really is. And you had an amazing dinner last week that you wanted to tell me about.
So many amazing dinners since then, so I can't even remember which one it was. But the other thing is that Ted Lieu's next fundraiser, and these aren't for him, by the way. He's not doing fundraisers for himself. These are all fundraisers for the 2018 candidates. That's who this is for. He organizes, he's going to have 8 candidates at his fundraiser next time. It's in July, and all the money goes to them, 0 goes to him. So he puts them together, and this is going to be a great one. I mean, all the people who I shouldn't say all the people, but lots and lots of famous people. And I noticed Lindsey Buckingham, late of Fleetwood Mac, is going to be performing, and which makes me really excited because he's tremendously talented and someone who I worked with when I was at Reprise. On that note, I must say adieu.
Okay, talk to you next week. Thank you, Howie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.